Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy.
According to the philosophers, the life cycle, or the cycle of transmigration of the soul, can last anything from 10,000 to 30,000 years. The myth of the Odyssey, or should I say the Iliad, and the defeat of Troy, which lasted 10 years, this is symbolic, and 10 represents 10,000, and 10,000 years is enough time to round off the process for a soul transmigrating and incarnating into the material world. So 10,000 years, or the 10 years that the Greeks went over to Troy to fight against the Trojans, represents that 10-year battle with the flesh, the Trojans being an aspect of the psyche, an aspect of who we are, and one of the lower aspects, because the Greeks, of course, are superior, of course, you see. So it's the Greeks going down to Troy, coming down into the world for 10 years and combating and fighting, and then finally conquering and defeating them, and then going back home, spending another 10 years wandering through the Mediterranean, trying to get back to Ithaca. So, and that is the transmigration of the soul. That's what that talks about. And this is explained in all the works. Hermes explained this process, and it explained how unconditioned consciousness descends from on high. And that's what we are. We are unconditioned consciousness. And as it descends from on high, it goes through the 7 heavens. You see, we are clothed with 7 heavens, and we have 7 chakras in our body. You know, 7 musical notes, 7 colours of the rainbow. You see this octave, or this septenary, everywhere you look, and we are included in this, and it's called 7 heavens. That's what it's called. And those 7 heavens are all governed by a guardian, a keeper of the heaven, and they are Saturn in this order: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. And then the 8th sphere, the octave, is the Earth. So coming down to the Earth and going back out of the rings of Saturn and back to Uranus, and hence the zodiac, or the stars, because we are star dust, and since the Bible says that dust you are and dust you shall return, we are destined to return as young stars, youngsters, through the portals or the fountains of life, which is what the philosophers have always called the stars. And we have a bright future ahead of us. And that is through the portals, the stargates, back to the source of unconditioned consciousness, which is the stars. And that's all that the Gospels and the myths, the mythologies are talking about, this process. The souls are said to be released from this process and wheel of incarnation through the rings of Saturn at the Tropic of Capricorn. Capricorn is the place where the souls descend, and opposite Capricorn is Cancer, and that's where the moon is positioned, and that is where the souls come in. Cancer is the gateway of men, the Tropic of Cancer, that is, and Capricorn is the gateway of the gods. Now you'll find that both of these nodes in the arc of the circle are to be found where the divine crosses are to be found in the skies, which are where the ecliptic crosses the equator in the heavens. And that happens at Gemini and Taurus, and Sagittarius and Scorpio. Right next door to Sagittarius is Capricorn, the gateway of the gods, and right next to Gemini is Cancer, the gateway of men. So that's how it works. And as those skies turn daily and yearly, souls are coming in, souls are going out, souls are coming in, souls are going out. And that's how the whole process of incarnation on this beautiful planet we call Earth takes place. According to Walter Russell, the planets are made from the rings of the sun. You see, suns give birth to planets, so the planets come from the equators, and then they acquire their own rotation, and what they do is then they go away from the sun, they recede, and they keep doing this until they become stars themselves. So from suns come planets, from planets come suns, come planets. And that's how it goes. Planets are embryos, stars are born. Now, there is word about our Earth becoming a sun. So there's word about that. And well, eventually it will. Whether it does in the near future or not remains to be seen. But eventually it is destined to be a sun, and in fact it does have a sun in the core, doesn't it? And so we're beginning to understand the mysteries of the universe, and one way in which this has been being done is by going back into the myths. The mythologies have all the answers. In fact, I was an avid reader of Immanuel Velikovsky in the 80s, and that's what he did. He went into the myths, and he discovered that there is much more truth there than meets the eye and what the authorities are saying. You see, they've made their books the true books, and everybody else's books are just a myth. And guess what? Everybody buys it, hook, line and sinker. So these precious works get ignored. And that's what's been happening, in fact. But people like Immanuel Velikovsky and Graham Hancock and all these guys and Wallace Thornhill, the mob at Thunderbolts, they are setting the example for uncovering truth where truth is in the mythologies, because what they are treatises on how the universe works, on electricity and magnetism. And we've missed the point, because we're going in there looking for godlike historical characters, you know, Krishna and Buddha and Arjuna and Jesus and St. Paul, and they're basically just aspects of nature.
Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy.
Well, in mythology, there's rivalry between those two planets, and it's usually portrayed as two brothers, twin brothers, or a male and a feminine aspect. For instance, Jesus and Mary Magdalene, or Jesus and Satan, you see. And Saturn always gets to play the negative part, because Saturn is... the relationship between Saturn and the Sun is this. The Sun is the primary of the solar system right now. But probably around about 15,000 years ago, it was Saturn. And Saturn, according to the scientists at thunderbolts.info, Wallace Thornhill and those guys there, the position of Saturn was in a northerly position. It was the sun of this solar system, and it was in a coaxial relationship with the Earth. And in between Saturn and the Earth there was Venus and Mars. So it was a coaxial relationship, you see. And Saturn was always in the northern heavens as the sun of this solar system. Then 15,000 years ago, there was a switch. This sun turns up. Now, Saturn's orbit takes 29.5 years. And that's the magic number. Because it relates to the sun in 29.5-year cycles, just as the moon relates to the earth in 29.5-day cycles. So you see this powerful relationship between the earth and the moon, the sisters, Isis and Nephthys, you know, and they are in a phase lock sort of orbit with each other, but it's very powerful. And the moon is very influential over this orb, the earth, her sister, and it causes the tides and things like that, or at least it affects that. And we see the effect of the moon with people on full moons with insanity and etc., all of those things. Well, Saturn does the same with the sun, and astrologers know that when Saturn is in transit, meaning when Saturn is in a position in your birth chart where you might have some certain frictions like afflictions. Okay, now this is astrological language, but it's still science. When Saturn comes to those returns, those transits and stuff like that, people notice it. They notice it. People who are aware. Not the average person, they don't know anything about this, but astrologers know the effect of Saturn. They know the effect of the moon, primarily. These two are the most powerful, without a doubt, in the solar system and in astrology. So, but in mythology you'll find that one is electric and one is magnetic. Alright, it's always like that. The relationship is always like that. And I'm pointing out the fact that L, which is the word, well, electricity derives from L. L is one of those words that turns up in the mythologies all the time. You have Emmanuel, Israel, the Bible, Babel, the bell for Baal that you have in the chapel and steeple and cathedral, and you know, you go to the altar to worship El or Allah. All of these L words that have to do with masculinity, because the letter L is lamed in Hebrew and it is erect. It is the male phallic, the obelisk. So, and that is pretty much the sun. It's a sundial, and the sun is phallic. El, Elohim, or Elios. But Saturn also gets the title of El. So there's always this friction between. Saturn is known as Baal, or Baal, or Bel, or just plain old El. And you see, Jesus was called in Matthew 1, verse 23, and the virgin shall give a child, and we shall call his name Emmanuel. Well, Emmanuel, Jesus Emmanuel, that is, he's got a friend, a dark friend called Magdalene. Interesting about that, isn't it? El and Mag, electricity and magnetism. So you see how these characters turn up. And by the way, Mary Magdalene, I mean, Mary's a dead giveaway. Mary is maritime, marine, all those water words. You know, M is the crest of the wave, actually. You know, the water, the waves, M. And in fact, the Hebrew letter M, mem, for M, means water. So, and they stole that off Egyptian hieroglyphs. Now, the ancients spoke about electricity and magnetism as fire and water. You see, that's why Jesus, J-E-S, is yes in Hebrew, which means the sun or fire. Fire and water is in the myths, and people are missing it, and it turns up in these words. I mean, I can go on about that. There's many other words. They're all there. Ra and gra, radiation and gravity. Same as, because electricity radiates and magnetism gravitates, or is grave. You've got levity and gravity. You see? And with the Saturnian cult, a lot of cubes turn up, you know. You see cubes, for instance, the Muslims, the Islamists go to Kaaba for the Kaaba, you see, and they go anti-clockwise around Saturn, just like the rings of Saturn. You see, they're just basically, Saturn is the Kaaba, the black Kaaba. And the Jews also wear the little black box on their foreheads and everything. That's the same thing. Monuments all around the world, as you mentioned, the one in Parliament here in Australia, we have the box, the cover. It turns up everywhere where the Saturnian cult like to leave reminders of their cult, you see, and their power, and where they are, and where they dominate, and where they rule. They like to sort of, like the animals that like to mark their territory, you see. Yeah, it also turns up in our institutions, you see, when they give you on graduation day the square and the round black hat, and they dress you in black. This is all Saturnian. And they give you your master's degrees, you know, you become, you get the degrees. What are these degrees? Well, the word degrees is a tricky one because it has to do with 360 degrees. And last time I checked, they were angles. And last time I checked, angles has to do with angels. So the language of angels happens to be the language of angles, which happens to be the angles that go around the circle, the degrees that you get when you get your master's degrees. Only the people who have their master's degrees don't know anything about the angles or the angels. So that's what the language of the angels is. It's astrology, as above, so below. As the orbs go around that circle, by degrees, you see the sun travels 1 degree every day, and it does these 365 degrees, and finally it goes around the circle. Well, every one of those angles is an angel, and those 365 angels are looking after us because they are different angles of emanation of vibration from the sun. Now, the sun being the chief life giver, if he's changed his position every day into a different angle, well, then that's going to affect us because we are directly sucking its energy. We are directly in its sphere. We're in the solar system, so we are just absolutely absorbing every photon that comes on every particular day, on a different angle, every day of the year. And people don't notice it because they're not looking. But the astrologer does, because he's looking for these and he sees them and he charts the course of the planets, and so he knows what they're doing. The sun that we have now was not so visible when Saturn was the sun. And if you read Hesiod and Homer and Virgil, Ovid and all of those greats, even John Milton and Dante Alighieri, you'll find that their works reminisce about a time when Saturn ruled the golden age. And he did, in fact he did. It was the central sun of the solar system. And the sun that we have now was, just a secondary player. And it appeared virtually out of nowhere around about 15,000 years. That's not my information, by the way. That's what I've read up on. And the scientists at Thunderbolts, I love that group of guys because they're really onto the mythology for looking for truth. But a good video to look at is Symbols of an Alien Sky. They've got a lot of good videos there. Wallace Thornhill's a great speaker and explains, the electric nature of the universe. But when Saturn then fell, his son Jupiter took over the reins, you see. Jupiter is Zeus, and Zeus castrated Kronos, remember? Defeated Kronos, his father Saturn. And according to all the mythologies, that was the day when harshness entered into the world. And in fact, Hesiod says in the Theognis, I think it is, or Works and Days. But anyway, Hesiod writes that Jupiter brought the 4 seasons and the suffering of the 4 seasons, but Saturn maintained 1 season. And how that happened is explained very well at the people on the internet at thunderbolts.info. And they've got all the videos there that explain the coaxial relationship between the Earth and Saturn. And Coaxial orbits are where planets are lined up like a string, like a say like a rosary necklace or something like that. They're all on the one axis, and so that was the arrangement of the planets. And there's other arrangements, of course. There's orbital arrangements. There's phase lock arrangements, like between the moon and the Earth, etc. So this was a very, very powerful and strong hierarchy that we had in the heavens, and a very different configuration to what we have today. But something happened in the past, and the atom that we call Adam, which is Amun and Aten, etc., our sun, has lost some particles and gained some other ones, just like electrons do when they discharge particles and become negative and positive ions. The same thing happens with solar systems. They lose particles, they gain particles, they change. Nothing is the same forever. If one thing is true, is that there will always be movement. The souls are said to be released from this process and wheel of incarnation through the rings of Saturn at the Tropic of Capricorn. Capricorn is the place where the souls descend, and opposite Capricorn is Cancer, and that's where the moon is positioned, and that is where the souls come in. Cancer is the gateway of men, the Tropic of Cancer, that is, and Capricorn is the gateway of the gods. Now you'll find that both of these nodes in the arc of the circle are to be found where the divine crosses are to be found in the skies, which are where the ecliptic crosses the equator in the heavens. And that happens at Gemini and Taurus, and Sagittarius and Scorpio. Right next door to Sagittarius is Capricorn, the gateway of the gods, and right next to Gemini is Cancer, the gateway of men. So that's how it works. And as those skies turn daily and yearly, souls are coming in, souls are going out, souls are coming in, souls are going out. And that's how the whole process of incarnation on this beautiful planet we call Earth takes place.
Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy.
Christianity comes from the word Christ. Christ means light. Light is what the Bible says God is. God is light. In fact, it's undivided light. So the Church of Christianity comes from the Church of Light. That's why the Pope carries the sun. You know, the monstrance. He goes around behind the sun, you see? Because they're telling you that it's a sun religion, it's light. But one thing that people miss is this, that Christianity, in particular, the Catholic religion, Catholic means universal. Universal means all-encompassing. And if it's an all-encompassing church, it means that it must not be biased to one of those orbs, which is the sun. There are 7 orbs. There are 7 orbs in the sky, right? 7 orbs. And they are the planets that the days of the weeks are named after. Sunday for the sun, Monday for the moon, etc. So you'll find in Christianity a reverence for Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and Mercury and the moon and Venus. How so? Well, I've already explained how they venerate the sun, because Christ, that's the sun, that's light. So the sun is there. But they also have Saturn, because of the Latin language, which comes from Saturn, you see. It's a Saturnian cult, and that's why they wear all the black, and they have the little yarmulkes and everything like that. They're the rings of Saturn. They wear the little cappuccini, which means the little caps. That's all for Saturn. And then, of course, you have Saint Peter. Well, that's Jupiter. Hallelujah. When you go to Rome and you kiss Jupiter's foot, you're kissing Zeus's or Jupiter's foot. So it's Jupiterian. You see, Jesus said, the Son said, "Oh, upon this rock I will build my church." He was talking about the rock of Jupiter, Saint Peter. And you look at Jupiter, it's a big rock. It's got all the angular momentum in the solar system. So that's why Jesus, the Son, says, "I'll build my church on this rock." Jupiter takes all the knocks. When some comet comes in, Jupiter says, "Yeah, come on, I'll take it." So he's the big boy. Mars is there. Mars would be, Mars would be one of the fiery sons of thunder that Jesus called his apostles, because Mars is martial and he wants to fight. Venus is there. Venus is, you know how the church always, the Catholic Church, for instance, they respect Mother Mary. Well, that would be the moon or Venus. And then Mercury is there also, because Jesus is the Word and the Word is Hermes. It's all hermetic. Everything in the Bible, everything, the lot of it is hermetics. So there are the 7 planets. I've just mentioned them. The universal church, Christianity, is not just solar. It's Saturnian, it's Jupiterian, it's Mercurian, it is Mercurian, Venetian, etc. It's all the 7 orbs, because it must be. It's a universal church. That's what it's telling you. It's telling you that it respects all the deities, not just the one, not just Jesus. The Virgin is there, St. Peter is there, St. Paul. Where does Paul come from? Paul comes from Apollo. Apollo is who? The sun, or Saturn. So there you've got Saturn, Paul, and Peter, Jupiter. It's all there. All the characters are there. Well, what I'm presenting in my videos and presentations, etc., is basically just hard researched information and evidence which indicates that the so-called Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, all come from science. They come from science, you see, and the science is more feminine than it is masculine, because it's philosophy, you see. Science and philosophy. Philosophia means love of Sophia, which is a goddess. That's wisdom. Wisdom is sophisticated Sophia, right? Whereas the masculine is theology. So what we see in Islam, what we see in the Jewish religion, and what we see in Christianity is what this dichotomy, you know, that goes along, and they juxtapose this femininity with masculinity. So you'll find that Christianity has this Virgin Mary thing, and then you've got this God phallic male boy thing, you see. And it's usually this one that does the business, and this one that tells the truth. This one's the exoteric, this is the esoteric. This one's the outer, this one's the inner, usually. That's how it works. The church comes from Circe, or Circe, or Kirke, who in the Iliad turned Odysseus's men into swine. And church is the moon. Circe is the moon. And why is that? Well, because we've got traditions of the moon bouncing back human souls back to the earth, because they don't have cut the grade to ascend. Therefore, the moon is the guardian of the first heaven. And so souls are bounced back. And so, in fact, the Iliad and the Odyssey are teaching truths about how the solar system works. But you'll find that the monotheistic religions that are corporations, based on earlier feminine sophist traditions, based on wisdom and science, bring out this masculine side in order to go out and conquer the world, you see. But they're all based on wisdom and philosophia and feminine stuff. For instance, this is why the Arabs have their green flag with the crescent of Venus, not the moon, because they are teaching you science. On their flag, they're teaching you science, in that from the Earth we can never see a full Venus sphere. It's impossible. She's always a crescent. And she's always emanating the most light from all of the other orbs. In fact, Venus is able to cast a shadow on the Earth. Just like the sun and the moon, Venus can cast a shadow on the Earth. That's how bright it is, and yet we're only seeing the crescent. And so Islam put that on their green flag, green being the colour of Venus, to teach us a scientific lesson. We know that you can't see Venus in its entirety, so we're putting it in the flag to show you science and to show the feminine Venetian nature of that religion. In fact, Kaaba means Venus, and Kaaba is the place they go to worship Allah, at the Kaaba Allah, the Kabbalah. Sounds familiar to the Jewish Kabbalah, doesn't it? Kaaba Allah, because Allah is El is electricity, and Kaaba would be magnetism, and electricity comes from magnetism, comes from electricity, comes from magnetism, etc., etc. And they're telling you the story in their books, only they veil these books and they paint them with allegory. And so suddenly Jesus becomes this Galilean, and then he has this whore turned good girl, Mary Magdalene, and she's there working with, so you see El and Mag, they're always there. All the characters, always this masculine phallic, and then this woman who's got failings, like, you know, Israel and his 12 sons and one bad daughter, Dinah, who gets raped by Shechem. And then, of course, you've got King Arthur and Guinevere, the naughty Guinevere. She betrays him and has sex with Lancelot. And then you've got Jesus and his 12, and there's always Mary, the loose one there, and etc., etc., because they're talking about basically the moon, you see, the orbs. The 7 orbs, Snow White and the 7 dwarves, turn up in every story, from the Bhagavad Gita to the Ennead. It's all about electromagnetism. Well, with the Jews and Hermes, there is a clear connection. Hermes is Moses, and I didn't say it. Marsilio Ficino said it, and he said it about 500 years ago in the Renaissance period, when he translated the Corpus Hermeticum. So they were brought over from the Arabs over into Renaissance Italy, and Marsilio Ficino was translating Plato, and all of a sudden he had to stop that and translate these Hermetic books, you see. And what he discovered was he found who Moses was. He found who Moses was, and that has been known to the world for over 500 years. Not that it wasn't known, but and he was not the only one. You know, he was not the only. There's many, countless. I mean, Sigmund Freud associated Akhenaten with Moses and all of this stuff. You see, so, but Hermes is Moses. In fact, the 18th dynasty pharaonic line included 2 names of importance: the Amenhoteps and the Tuthmoseses. Now, let's have a look at Tuthmoses, shall we? Toth is Hermes, and Moses is Hermes. So here we have the 18th dynasty pharaohs, which, by the way, is the most famous dynasty of all of them. The 18th. You've got Hatshepsut, you've got Nefertiti's there, Tutankhamun's there, Akhenaten, the monotheist or the madman, megalomaniac, was there, and you've got, as I said, the Tuthmoseses and the Amenhoteps. And by the way, Amenhotep means Solomon, basically, because Amun is Sol Amun, and Sol has to do with peace and the sun, and that's what Hotep means in Egyptian. So there you've got Moses and Solomon in Egypt. Wow. So it's a very hermetic religion. It's very hermetic. In fact, Hermes carries the caduceus, and the caduceus is the staff with intertwined serpents, and then the wings on the top of the staff, well, they are the 2 tablets of the law of Moses. 1, 2. They're the 2 tablets. The right brain and the left brain, and they're sitting on the staff, which is the spinal column, the spine. So it is hermetic, and of course the Arabs, the Muslims and Islam have their phallic symbols too. You see, they might turn around and point their fingers at the Christians who have the cross, but the cross is just the symbol for the sun, because the sun actually makes a cross. When you get the solstices and the equinoxes, and around a circle, they make a cross, and that's the sun going around in its orbit. Therefore, or orbiting with the sun, and it forms the cross. So they turn around, oh, look at the cross, the Christians are, that's an idol. Well, what's the moon? Or Venus, they've got the crescent of Venus, etc. Well, that is their lunar or solar focus and attention. It shows that they also are respecting the orbs. There isn't a religion on the planet that's not respecting the orbs. Who are the Buddhists? Last time I checked, Buddha was Hermes. Oh, so they are Hermes in the East. Yeah, sure. In Japan, Shintoism. It's Buddhism. Hinduism. Hermeticism. That's what it is. And, it's interesting how they, when they ask for water in Japan, they ask for mizu. Mizu? Sounds like Mizes, the Syrian word for Moses. And what does Moses mean? Drawn from the water. And you go to Japan, Hermetic Japan, Buddhist Hermetic Japan, and they ask you for mizu, water. That all indicates that once upon a time there was a universal thinking, scientific, philosophical thought process that every conscious human being applied to their lives and were benefited from that science. And the Egyptians practiced this. The Egyptians practiced this holy science, which is the science of the transmigration of the soul. And it's all there intact in Islam, in Judaism, and in Christianity.
Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy.
The awakening is happening on different levels for different people, but sure, you look around, it's the 24th of March 2012, today, and we were just in the shopping mall before, and we saw a lot of these sleepy, dreamy people running around buying things and thinking all this buying stuff is so nice, and it appears that people are buying and selling and eating and drinking more so than ever before. Well, the prophecies talk about this, and they say, at the end of the cycle, people would take no note. And they take no note when they are buying and selling and eating and drinking, because it's not wrong to buy and sell and eat and drink. This is great stuff. But when you're thinking that that is all there is to do here in the world, you've got a job to do, a 9-to-5er, and you leave your children at home, you run off for your career and climb the corporate ladder and make more money so you can have more properties, and then you die and you leave all these molecules behind. Well, people who think that their careers and their jobs and this world and all of this technology, this abhorrent technology that man has produced, it's an aberration. People who think that it's all there is, and let's buy it all and sell and eat and drink and not take any note. What are they not taking any note of? Well, they're not taking any note of their consciousness and their development and their spirituality, which is basically what we're here to do, to develop our souls and progress and rise above, and to rise above from that animal nature, and climb up and experience the metamorphosis as a human being and remember who we are, and the apotheosis. But people appear to be sleeping. It doesn't seem that there is a great awakening of all the masses, but it's not our concern, because those ones there will awaken at the right time. It's not their time. You can't go down to primary school children and tell them, hey man, learn your math, learn about what I'm learning in secondary school, buddy. If you don't, you can, they're in primary school, so you're in secondary school. Which way are you going? Down that way, back to primary, or you're going up to tertiary? Well, there's always a progression, and it's logical. Of course you're going to progress. You're going to progress in your consciousness. But when you're in tertiary school, consciously speaking, and you look down and you see kids in kindergarten, grown men and women in kindergarten, like Barack Obama saying, oh, we want to go into Iran now. We want to squash the First Amendment and stop all protesting. How about that? When you see that sort of stupidity, you see that grown men and women can be actually childish and in kindergarten state inside of their very bodies, and Hermes calls these ones unconscious human beasts, whereas the evolved portion of mankind, which will ascend, is the conscious human being. So it's very dangerous to be sleeping at this particular time in history, because the Gospels say, careful, yes, lest ye shall fall asleep.
Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy. If one visits the Shrine of Remembrance, the War Memorial in Melbourne, one might be reminded or learn that the World War I armistice was signed on the 11th of November 1918. Making for a ceasefire on the Western Front at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month. Nearby, on the south bank of Melbourne, there is an artwork titled World Within, World Without by Helen Bodycomb. Now, this artwork reflects the constellations above Victoria at 11 a.m. on the 16th of November 2009, when Prime Minister Kevin Rudd made his national apology to the forgotten Australians. I was reminded of the number 11 once again. I asked Santos Bonacci about the number 11.
The number 11 keeps turning up because it stands for duality. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Or 1111. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4. 4 is the cube. The cube is the hex. Because when you flat pack a cube, you get a hex. And all of those numbers, 2, 4 and 6, they're feminine. They are even numbers, therefore they come from Eve. Eve is even, Adam is odd. So 2 was the number that Pythagoras spat on the ground, because he hated that number, you see, supposedly. Well, he didn't hate a number, he wouldn't be that stupid, but he knew how destructive the number 2 can be. And likewise the number 4 and the number 6. So you'll find that the elites will use that in their symbology. Look at 9/11 for instance. 9/11 is a classic case. When the Twin Towers on 9/11 came down, Saturn was in Gemini. And Gemini looks like, well, it's just two lines like that with a top and a bottom on it. So 2 pillars. And when they built the Twin Towers in 71 through 73, that was Saturn's other return when Saturn was in Gemini. And Saturn, as I said before, takes 30 years to go round in its orbit. So they built it in 71 and destroyed it in 2001. Now, and this was when Saturn was transiting Gemini, you see. So this 11 and the number 2 is very important to them. and it carries a lot of power with it, and especially in the Saturnian cult. I have touched on this in many of my radio shows and stuff, where I've spoken about all of the alignments that took place on 9/11. Quite incredible. In fact, I discussed there how Saturn was transiting the 9th house to the 8th house in between the two plane crashes on 9/11. So on the first plane crash at 8:43 a.m, the Saturn was still in the 9th house, which is the house of travel.
8:46.
8:46. The Sun was still in the 9th house, which is the house of travel, and by the time the second plane crashed,
9:02.
9:02, yeah, 9:02, 9:03.
Yeah.
Guess what? Saturn was in the 8th house. That's the house of death. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You can't. And there's many more alignments. I can tell you what was happening with Mercury. Mercury was on the ascendant in the sign of Libra, which is about justice. Pluto was in the sign of Sagittarius, which also has to do with religion, and the religious aspect of 9/11 was certainly a part of it. Pluto was squaring with the Sun in Virgo, and of course, as I said, Saturn was in Gemini, so that's 3 mutable signs and a square between the mutable signs. Mutability means change, and mutability, you see, change. So there you have the Sun, Pluto and Saturn in the 3 mutable signs squaring on that particular day, causing all these things to come about. And there's more, a lot more, but I won't go into it.
Yep.
But it goes on and on and on.
Thought I might just add some basic observations I've made myself regarding the word 11. If you break down the word 11, you can get EL plus even or Eve. So the EL may refer to a god such as the god El, which is perhaps a male god, and then you have Eve, the female portion. So you have El and Eve. Now this El also relates to electricity, so you may have electricity versus the feminine magnetism. So you have the perhaps polarity between the pillars, the 2 pillars that, well, that's what the number 11 looks like. Also you have the EL and you have even, and that reminds me of the word level, because the word level has the V in the middle with the EL on both sides, making the EL even, if you will, 11. Anyway, that's it. Bye for now. Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy.
The controllers, or the elites, are families, bloodlines that have maintained power and wealth over millennia, and they come from the empire families of Egypt, Babylonia, Assyria, Medo-Persia, Greece and Rome, and now of course the modern incarnation of empire, which is the Anglo-American world power. And they are everywhere throughout this world power, you see, and they've been there all the time. America is the military arm of this world power. England is the financial arm, and good old Vatican, that takes care of all the rest of the business. You know, big banking, big crime, drugs, the God business. You know, guns, oil, drugs, and sex, and that's usually the kind that you would be the worst kind. Yeah, they do it all. People trafficking, the lot, and they've always been there. They've always been pirate families, and they have their own secret dealings, and they work out of Switzerland. Of course, Switzerland would be the crime capital of the earth, with the priests of Amun-Ra up there in that country. controlling all the banking. This is why you'll find that all of these families, they have all their wealth and all their money in Swiss banks, you see, because it's a neutral place where you don't get prosecuted and you don't get caught. You can go there, you can be an assassin, and you'll get looked after by the elites. They'll keep you looked after as long as you do what they want and as long as they get their money. These people are basically, well, they're unconscious and they're animalistic, and they're described as entities that are going downward, whereas the children of the sun are the ones that are going upward, the Elohim and the Nephilim, you know, up and down Jacob's ladder, up and down Jacob's ladder, continual traffic of souls. So on this earth there are people that are going down to hell and there are people that are going up to heaven, so to speak. It's a, you know, it's the poetic language of the Bible when it talks about heaven. Heaven is, there's no address for heaven. It's in here. It's in here. It's in the body. Heaven. You can be in heaven in your own kingdom, which is the temple of God, the body. And so these people have no fear. Their time is up and they're not going to be around for much longer. But they're just a wave of unconscious entities that have appeared on this planet. They've incarnated just as we have, who are on the way up, hopefully. And they are on the way down, and here we are at the crossroads where we meet on this plane in the middle kingdom. You know, we're on this earth together with, you know, with good people sharing it with bad people, and many are performing such great bad practices that they'll need to stay on the material plane for many, many thousands of years incarnating, because there's a long way back for them. And the only way back is through vibration. As we change the vibration within, as we breathe and change and grow and move forward in progression in terms of spiritual and emotional evolution and knowledge and consciousness, well, the vibration follows suit, just like the Schumann resonancy of the Earth. Up until mid-80s it was sitting on, I think, 7.5 or 7.8. It's now vibrating very, very high. I believe it's up to 10 or 11 or something like that right now, and it's going to spiral exponentially upward. And so the Earth is experiencing this upgrade in vibration. So is the Sun, so are all the planets in the solar system. There's change everywhere in the solar system. And so as the Sun goes through this new portion of the Milky Way galaxy, it enters this morphogenic field which upgrades our DNA, and we go from, say, flesh-blood DNA to crystalline optic fibre bodies. It's an upgrade, it's a metamorphosis, just like the caterpillar who becomes a butterfly. So that's what we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to, we're in that moment where the transition is going to come upon us. How it happens remains to be seen. But we've been through it before. It's natural. We've done it many times. So when it kicks in, we will know what to do. We will all know what to do. The Bible talks about some people grinding their teeth and gnashing their teeth because they didn't listen. There will be those too. There will be people that will lose out, and there will be loss of life, and there will be grinding and gnashing of teeth, yeah, for sure. And in particular that will be the churchgoers, because they've been deceived the most. They've all been hoodwinked. There's mind control everywhere. Rome has been controlling people's minds properly, well, for 2,000 years. And she has her ways of doing this, but all of that you see out in the world, all of it institutionalized mind control. And they keep people dumb, and they keep people sick and busy. Big Pharma comes along with their treatments, no cures, just treatment. And the institutions teach all of the erroneous science. And the PhD types run along with their fathead diseases, repeating erroneous opinions like parrots that they were taught, because they don't know any better, and they don't do their own studies, and they don't have an open mind, and they don't care. They've just got their jobs to maintain. So they're compartmentalised. They're specialised in one field, and they don't know how that field connects with any of the other fields around, and yet they all connect. Everything's interconnected, and yet people can't see it. They can't see it because they don't know how to think. They've been told what to think. Therefore, everything's divided. There's a Muslim, there's a Christian, and there's a Jew, and he's black, and he's tall, she's fat, and everything is separated. Well, what I'm doing is I'm teaching comprehensivism and syncretism. Everything is embraced in one comprehensive, philosophical, syncretic thought process. And that's what philosophy does. But it must be syncretic. You see, you have many comprehensivists out there, but they don't syncretize. They don't show the interrelatedness of all things. And that can be done through the science of electromagnetism. That is the glue that bonds all of these seemingly disjointed philosophies and sciences and everything like that. Once we understand that everything is happening by virtue, by grace of electricity, then we can start to get somewhere with our, with our sciences and philosophies, and start teaching them properly and comprehensively and syncretically. Well, the source of the controlling elite's power is the dark satellite. They answer to the dark satellite. The dark satellite is the orb, one of the chakras of the earth. The earth has 7 chakras, just as we do, and one of those keeps the animal souls of disembodied human beings that didn't cut the grade, were bounced off the moon. Remember, the moon is the guardian of the first heaven. Circe, who turns people into swine. Yes, it's true. It's talking about science. The moon actually does that. She has her web where if anyone doesn't have the vibration to ascend past her, they get bounced back. And they get bounced back to the chakra of the earth, which contains and houses the animal spirits. Because disembodied humans must go down a grade if they don't cut the grade to go up to ascend. And they are controlling the elite. And this dark satellite, as it's called, it has been at perihelion for 2,000 years. And in 1881, it began to recede and go to apohelion, which means furthest away from the sun, or furthest away from its binary orb, the orb that it has a relationship to. So let's say this is the Earth. The dark satellite has been at perihelion, so it's been closest to the Earth. This animal chakra has been very close, but since 1881 it's been receding and pulling away. And what happens with that is our consciousness grows, and these entities, these dark entities, animalistic, very intelligent, unconscious though, entities, and very nasty, some of them, they who are controlling, say, the Vatican and, your Queen Elizabeths and all that, those controlling types, they are now receding, and they are wanting to try and prolong their life, but as it recedes and as it goes away, the Earth is more and more free. Every day relieves itself of this dark satellite. And so the fear that you see around on the secular plane by your Barack Obama types and your Gordon Brown types and these terrorists, that's all done so that there's fear on the Earth, so that the dark satellite still has something to feed off. But that will change soon. Once the dark satellite's right out of the way, there will not be any fear on this planet. And there wasn't not too long in the distant past, say like a good 7,000 or 8,000 years ago. We know that there was relative peace on this Earth, and that there was not this fear and trauma that we have today on the Earth. And it's due to the dark satellite, which is receding. So it's really something to look forward to. So these fourth dimensional entities, they've been controlling the place for a long time, terrorizing mankind, polluting the thought waves, trying to destroy the truth the moment it is born, wherever it is born on the face of the planet. They are always there to squash it. They send their emissaries and agents to go out there and control it and squash it the moment it tries to grow. But now with the consciousness shift, it's too late. We've got the internet, we've got the information's all out there, and their game is up, the writing's on the wall, and they're over. So it's going to be very hard for this dark satellite to maintain itself on this planet, because the good energies are coming and they're out.
Santos Bonacci has performed an extraordinary amount of research. He has drawn his own conclusions, just as you are encouraged to draw yours. Enjoy.
Most masculine names you'll find come from the sun, and most famous masculine names. For instance, have a look at some of the greatest men who have ever lived. Napoleon the Great. Napoleon means from Apollon. Apollo or Apollyon is little Apollo, you see. And Napoleon Bonaparte. The na means from, so that means from Apollo. Cyrus the Great, well, that would be Osiris, and Osiris is the sun, last time I checked. Dennis means the sun. Don means the sun. Don is from the same as London, and that is the Lord, the sun, and the Lord is the L, which is the sun. Michael means the sun. Emmanuel means the sun. Isaac, Jacob, Joshua, Jesse, Jesus, Joseph, Robert. Let's have a look at Ray. Raymond comes from Ra. Ra is the sun. Reg is the sun. Regal. I mean, the list goes on, and all the other Michael, Emmanuel, and all those ones that end with L, that's the sun. John means the sun. Peter means the sun by virtue of Jupiter. Paul means the sun. Apollo is the sun. Look, the list goes on and on and on. The amount of sun names that that males derive their names from, and also feminine names, you know. Diana is the moon, Artemis, Aphrodite, Fry, Mary is the water, and of course has to do with the moon. Magdalene, Leah, Elizabeth. Well, how's about that? Elizabeth is dead giveaway. El is the sun, and Beth means house, the house of the sun. Elijah, all of these names, all of them, they all go back to the sun. The sun is the electric hero of the solar system, the most venerated of the vital, life-giving organs of the solar system.
Okay, fire away.
In the mythologies, there is a lot to do with the language of duality and the forces of nature. And as I mentioned before with L and mag, electricity and magnetism, you'll find that boy and girl, which is what L is, boy, and mag is girl, good and evil, electricity and magnetism, of course, hot and cold, light and dark, etc., keep turning up in our mythologies. Now, this dualism has to do with the properties of magnetism being matter and the properties of electricity being invisible, hence spiritual. So you have spirit and matter has always been identified with the feminine principle, because matter is mother, is material, is all of those M words. And again, I already mentioned water, maritime, marine, but you get all of these M things. M and N both have the crest of the wave, you see, that's what the N is. And in fact, in Hebrew, N, nun, the letter N means fish, swimming. And in Latin you have navy and nautical and all of these water words. So both M and N are all these water words, you see. So that's why you have the human parts of the human body, for instance, are named after this. For instance, the hand is manus, from which we derive the word human. Humanos. Human comes from our hand, which is very, very well designed and very peculiar to humankind. So, and manus is feminine in Latin. So it's feminine, the hand. And so you see M and N, manu, always to do with water and material things. Whereas on the other hand, the opposite word is pertaining to the male, you see, and the electric force. And that is the father, which is where we get the word pater, and also the word pattern. So pattern is pater, father, matter is material, mother. So from the patterns come forth the matter, mind and matter, spirit and matter, electricity and magnetism. And those electric patterns are what create matter, the effect. And this is why the Bible says, and the Word was made flesh. The Word, who is the Word? Well, it's the Logos. Who is the Logos? Well, John 1:1. It says that the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God's Son. Well, that's the Logos, the sound, you see. So it's the light that produces the effect. And so the Word is made flesh. The flesh is the effect. The Word, the light, is the cause of the effect. It's cause and effect. It's all about cause and effect. And cause and effect is produced by electricity and magnetism. But magnetism is just negative electricity. So really all there is electricity. It's an electric universe.
These sculptures are titled The Guardians. They are situated on the Yarra River in South Bank, Melbourne. In my opinion, they bear an uncanny resemblance to the Electric Universe cover by the band Earth, Wind and Fire. Let's finish out this vid with some music from Santos Bonacci, and we'll have a look at these sculptures.